Welcome to Audible Wisdom. Today we are going to discuss a problem that many people face, procrastination. There's an interesting fable. It is a good illustration of the end result of procrastination. There was a man who lived comfortably in a quiet town. One day a tanner moved into the neighborhood. The tanner's house was full of all kinds of leather, and the stench of the leather was unbearable. This man couldn't stand the stench of his neighbor's leather. So he went to the tanner's house and told him to move out as soon as possible. Time and again, the tanner promised to move immediately, but delayed moving, and so it dragged on and on. With the passage of time, the man began to get used to the smell of leather, so he stopped pushing the tanner to move. The message of this fable is, if a person who has a bad habit of procrastination continues it, his life or work will slowly be dragged into this vicious circle, and he will not be able to get out of it. Most people have the habit or experience of procrastinating. Procrastination is often jokingly referred to as one of the common problems of modern people. Procrastination may seem like a common problem in life, but most people fail to recognize it for what it really is. Procrastination may sound like a small problem, but it's more than just a lack of responsibility or self-control. In the end, procrastination actually has its own deep psychological causes. Procrastination affects the quality of our work, our studies, and our lives. So why do we procrastinate? How can we change this habit for good? Today we are going to introduce you to a book, The Psychology of Procrastination, that will help you find the answers. The authors Burka and Lenora Yuen are PhD psychologists from the University of California. This book breaks down the 4 psychological causes of procrastination from a psychological perspective. How do we understand our own and others' procrastination? What are some effective ways to change your procrastination? After reading today's content, we will all find the answers to these questions. 1. Under the procrastination iceberg. According to psychologist Sigmund Freud, the external manifestations of a person's life are like icebergs on the surface of the sea. It is the result of the struggle between the ego, which seeks to fulfill one's present desires, and the superego, which seeks to realize one's ideal self. Procrastination is a manifestation of one's life. Studying the problem of procrastination by focusing on small, seemingly quick fixes to procrastination is hardly the way to solve it. It is difficult to get to the root of the procrastination problem. In other words, we can only face the problem of procrastination head-on by digging out the real psychological knot behind procrastination. Only then can we face procrastination head-on and truly understand why we choose to do it. Then we can begin to make real changes at the heart level. This is the way to change procrastination. Next, let's look at the internal causes of procrastination. There are 4 psychological factors that make us actively choose to procrastinate over and over again. Then, let's look at the deeper causes of procrastination. Let's find out what past experiences and environments have nurtured and solidified the habit and mindset of procrastination. Finally, we will suggest some specific coping strategies. Based on the 2 parts of our discussion, we will also propose some proven and effective ways to change procrastination. 2. For psychological causes of procrastination. No one is born a procrastinator. As we grow up, once we develop a certain mindset, we find that we can't help but procrastinate. And no matter how hard we try, we can't get rid of it. The 4 most common psychological factors of procrastination are perfectionism, avoidance of success, rebellion against reality, and the illusion of time. The first is perfectionism. The more we want to do something perfectly, the more likely we are to procrastinate. So the more likely we are to be slow to get started, or we may put it off for a long time and find it hard to finish. For example, a leader assigns a very important task. If a person wants to do this task as perfectly as possible, then he will have to think about it over and over again, even do it and change it and do it again, becoming so internally consumed. Isn't that the beginning of procrastination? From a psychological point of view, as long as he procrastinates, he doesn't have to face the end result. Then he doesn't have to face the fact that maybe he didn't do a good enough job. Leonardo da Vinci is the most frequently cited procrastinator of all the greats, due to his pursuit of perfection and the constant arrival of new inspirations. The famous Mona Lisa took 4 years to paint. The Last Supper took 3 years. The relationship with the client was seriously jeopardized. In the end, Da Vinci's legacy consisted of no more than 20 paintings, 5 or 6 of which were still in his possession at the time of his death. Da Vinci himself was distressed by his delays. In one of his notes, he wrote, tell me, what has been accomplished?" According to this book, it's actually because Da Vinci cared so much about his paintings. He wanted the best possible representation. The outcome of his paintings had a direct impact on how he felt about himself. So he procrastinated. Here we find something very interesting. The pursuit of perfection often gives us a sense of purpose and motivation to move forward, and can even be seen as a strength. But it is closely related to procrastination. This is something that many people never think about. It turns out that to combat procrastination, we sometimes have to let go of our obsession with perfection. So how do we change this mindset? Do we just stop striving for perfection? Obviously, that's not realistic, because the drive for perfection is a quality that many people want to keep. So we need to look elsewhere. The book suggests a method. It's called From a Fixed Mentality to a Growth Mentality. What does that mean? Let me ask you a question. Do you think that a person's talent, level, or status is fixed, or can it always change? Stanford University psychologist Carol Dweck found this in her research. If a person is willing to believe the latter, they are less likely to procrastinate, because he believes that people can change and improve. Even if he doesn't get it perfect this time, it doesn't stop him from moving forward in his pursuit of perfection so that he can be better next time. One mistake is not the final judgment of a person, nor is one failure the final result of a person's career. If someone expresses contempt for us because we are not perfect, the growth-minded person will see this as the fault of the critic, not of us. Because the belief that people are always growing means that the past is always the past, and that we are always on the path to becoming better. Have you noticed? The opposite of perfectionism is not giving up, but flexibility and growth. We don't have to reach perfection all at once, but we do have to be in constant pursuit of perfection. Sometimes changing procrastination may simply require letting go of our obsession with achieving the perfect result all at once. The second psychological factor is success avoidance. Many of you may wonder, avoidance of failure is understandable, but what does avoiding success mean? Is there anyone who is afraid of success? That's right. That's what the author is trying to tell us. The reason many people procrastinate is because they're afraid that if they don't, they might accidentally succeed. This may sound counterintuitive. Let's try some questions together. Suppose you've been doing well at work for a while. Do you have a nagging worry that something might go wrong? Have you noticed that you are doing better than the people around you? Are you worried that your friends or family are jealous of you and talking about you behind your back? When you have a job that you can turn in right away, the leader will probably praise you publicly for your efficiency. Would you worry that your leader expects too much of you and wants you to do better next time? After hearing these questions, you may begin to understand why some people are afraid of impending success. Because success at anything isn't all good. It also means the risk of climbing high and falling low, the strain on other people's resources, the pressure to live up to other people's expectations, and so on. It's just that the word success is so glorified in our daily lives. We rarely realize that deep down we fear it. Therefore, on the behavioral level, these unrecognized fears become manifestations of procrastination. There is a case study in the book of a girl who majored in English. She happened to take a psychology course. In the course of her studies, she found that she enjoyed the course very much. She did a lot of research for her final paper, but in the end, she couldn't finish it on time. The professor called her into his office and said, "I think you're afraid to succeed." The girl was surprised. She thought the professor would say that she was afraid to fail. This statement made the girl think. She seemed to realize what she was afraid of, because she didn't like her English major. If she gets a good grade in this psychology class, she will be faced with a big decision. Should she change her major or not? But right now, she's not mentally ready to make that choice, nor is she willing to face it. And so, without realizing it, she has chosen to procrastinate. It is not the fear of failure, but the fear of the pressure that comes from the change in life or work after success. Then, if a person is really afraid of success, what should he or she do? In fact, The answer is already there. The answer is to try to fully and objectively visualize the results of success before doing anything. Allow the hidden fear to rise to the surface of your consciousness. You may find that the outcome is less stressful than you thought. There's an American TV show called Our Day. There's a couple on it. They have a great way of dealing with the unknown. It's called Writing Down the Worst-Case Scenario. In this American drama, the man is running for Congress. But just before the election, he hesitates and withdraws. He doesn't know what change or potential success will bring him. So the wife lists all the worst-case scenarios with him. For example, after the election, people in the community who liked the couple hated him because he became a politician. As they go through the list, the husband realizes that he can make specific changes in each of these things. For example, he could use his position as a councilman to do more for the community. That way, people in the community might like him more. When the vague unknown becomes knowable, he will have the confidence and motivation to deal with the matter. Unconsciously, we may fear the changes that come with success. For example, our friends may become jealous and alienate us. We may face more pressure after success. We may be forced to stand out, appear different from the rest of the world. Success may feel like when you were a kid and you raised your hand in class and answered a question correctly and you blushed. In the midst of our accomplishments, there may be some anxiety and fear in our hearts. After listing all these feelings, we can realize that which ones are unrealistic and unfounded. More importantly, if we can visualize the outcome of an event, we are better able to reduce our mental resistance, overcome our delays, and achieve our goals. This is why modern athletes are so interested in meditative training. In meditation, they actively visualize themselves succeeding, imagining themselves running to the finish line, crossing the high bar. This kind of visualization helps the athlete to accept the result of success and advance in the deepest part of the mind, thus avoiding procrastination and internal worries. After using this method, you'll find that no matter what our answers are, the urge to procrastinate is diminished. Because once we can visualize the unknown risks behind success, we no longer fear success itself. The third psychological factor is resistance to reality. What is reality? Reality is something that comes to us no matter what we think. But before it comes, there is another way to passively resist it, and that is to procrastinate. For example, putting off going to bed for a little while so that the day doesn't seem to be over. By starting a difficult task a little later, the feeling of powerlessness comes later. There is a man mentioned in the book. He always felt that his wife was too controlling. She made him sweep the floor 20 times. Even though the husband promised to do it, he just didn't do it. In the end, the wife felt that her husband was deliberately antagonizing her and became angry. On the other hand, the husband found his wife's incessant and aggressive attitude suffocating. In this case, the wife may feel that her husband is unmotivated. The husband may think that he has already promised to do something. So what if he is a little late? Procrastination is actually the husband's weapon of resistance to reality. I may have to sweep the floor, but by procrastinating, I finally gain more control over myself. Procrastination at this point is like exercising a power. Some workers who are not interested in their work but are forced to do it for a living. They feel that life has not given them the strength and courage to quit. So they procrastinate to prove that they still have at least a little control over their lives. Sometimes procrastination is even a power of punishment. A person can punish others by procrastinating. In the book, there is a girl named Teeny. She was a good girl who obeyed her parents and did very well in school. But when she got to college, she started procrastinating, which eventually led to her dropping out. At the age of 34, she looked back on her past and suddenly realized that she was actually using this approach to punish her parents for controlling her in this way. She wanted to be independent. She didn't want to be who they were trying to control her to be. So she continued to put off dealing with her school life. We can see that Teeny's behavior is not really independent, because her choices are based on rebellion against her parents. She's not becoming the person her parents want her to be, but she is not becoming the person she wants to be. She just wants to be independent. She is rebelling against reality. As the psychologist Adler said, she is fighting an enemy that we cannot see. Now that we know that procrastination is sometimes a form of rebellion against reality, The most basic way to solve this problem is to allow ourselves to achieve it in other ways. For example, the husband mentioned earlier. He can simply say that he is willing to sweep the floor, but he wants to do it at a time of his choosing. 14. In addition to dropping out of college, she could choose to move out of the house. Or she could get an internship and become financially independent. These are all better options. This is where understanding procrastination from a psychodynamic point of view can inspire us. For a normal human being, the need to rebel against reality and take control of our lives to some degree is always there. If we don't recognize it, it can manifest itself in distorted forms, such as procrastination. But once we become aware of it and actively give ourselves more options, procrastination is no longer the instinctive first choice. The fourth psychological factor is the illusion of time. Time is objectively perceived as fair to everyone. There are 365 days in a year, 24 hours in a day, and not a single second is off. But in the psychological context, the first illusion of time is the illusion that the past is not over. This illusion often comes from some important point in time that is too important for us to realize. It is so important to us that we don't want it to be in the past. For example, Josh is mentioned in the book. He was once a talented athlete, a college basketball star, but an injury ended his basketball career. After that, although he was friendly and well-liked, he became a salesman for a software company. He couldn't help but miss deadlines. When people ask Josh why he procrastinates, he laments, "The people who work here have never done anything important. They've never heard their name echo around the stadium." Josh's performance shows that deep down inside there is a little man who wants time to stop, a little man who wishes he could stay in the glory days before he was injured. We can imagine that the impact of that time on him was so profound that he didn't quite get over it after he left the basketball court. Procrastination, similar to Josh's behavior, is common in everyday life. Many of us come home from work in the evening. It's time to go to bed, but we can't help but swipe our phones until midnight. What we think is, "I had a really hard day today, and before I can enjoy my time, the day is over." So we can't help but spend a lot of time swiping our phones. It's as if by delaying sleep we can make time stay in today. The second type of time illusion is the mental illusion of time. It's when we use our subjective feelings to measure things related to time. For example, we often hear people complain that 10 years ago was not 2004, but 2014. This is actually a subjective distortion of time. When people have expectations, they will always distort their perception of other elements for the sake of their expectations. For example, when we want to relax, we will say to ourselves, "This task is due in a month, but it can actually be done in 3 days. I can still have fun for more than 20 days. And if there are really only 3 days left, we will say to ourselves, even though this task takes 3 days, I can do it in 1 day and 1 night. It's only on the last night that we realize it. This task really takes a month." On the one hand, we hope to escape the constraints of the task. We also don't want to endure the anxiety that comes with it. So we distort our subjective perception of time so that we don't feel anxious and can get by. The illusion of time is one of the most difficult cognitions and mindsets to adjust because it is deeply rooted in our consciousness and allows us to get by. We keep telling ourselves that we haven't been playing for long and that this task won't take long. It's better to tell ourselves that even if this task takes a long time, I still want to play. Facing our needs and being honest with ourselves about our desires will allow us to reconcile with them instead of procrastinating. Instead of procrastinating, we can plan to deal with the anxiety of conflicts between our needs and our schedules. So far, you should have a deeper understanding of procrastination than you did before. Procrastination stems from some deep-rooted beliefs in our minds. The pursuit of perfection, the avoidance of success, the defiance of reality, and the illusion of time. So procrastination is not just a behavior, not just a habit. There are also psychological factors that lie beneath the iceberg. But where do these internal mindsets come from? Why do they come to us? It all has to do with our past experiences. 3. Sources of inner thought. The first source of inner psychology is the family. The family of origin is a deep-seated pain in the heart of many people in this era. However, it is also true that Any explanation of the causes of procrastination that omits an analysis of the family environment is incomplete. How does upbringing affect procrastination? According to neuroscientists, the brain's expectations for the future are based on what it has learned in the past. Therefore, as we grow, if there are experiences that get us used to procrastinating as a way of solving problems, then that habit and pattern spreads into our lives today. Imagine this. You see your boss saying to an employee, "You made a big mistake. You've lost some data." The boss sounds a little critical. What do you think will happen to this employee? How do you think the employee will react? Fear and apology, or anger and confrontation? In the book, Rose, the main character who witnessed this scene, was very nervous. But she found that the coworker's reaction was beyond her expectations. The coworker actually said to her boss, "Yes, please point it out to me and I'll change it." Rose thought she would get defensive and defend herself. She would start to feel hurt and sad, to the point where she could cry at any moment. By communicating with the other person, Rose realized that she had tacitly admitted that she would be scolded for her mistakes, and even that she deserved to be scolded for her mistakes. This was because her parents used to scold her every time she made a mistake. Even though her parents are no longer with her, she has already learned to automatically and spontaneously blame herself for her mistakes. The colleague, on the other hand, had no such experience. So when she was criticized, she did not feel that she was being treated harshly. She just naturally and calmly saw it as a learning opportunity. When she faced her boss's criticism with such an attitude, the boss was less likely to get angry. The incident naturally went away. So what does this have to do with procrastination? It's simple. Think about it. If a person is in an environment where they are afraid of being blamed for something, then it's not a good idea for them to do a bad job. So when it comes to doing a task that could result in blame if not done correctly, would procrastination become an effective way to avoid being attacked? This is how the family environment affects people. So what kind of home environment is more likely to cause procrastination? There are 5 basic types of home environments that are major causes of procrastination. The first is pressure. Parents tell their children that they must succeed. The result is that in order to ensure success, the child always feels that things are not being done perfectly enough, or the timing is not good enough, so he procrastinates again and again. The second type is doubt. This type of parent sends the message, "You don't deserve it, you can't do it." In the face of doubt, the child will either become self-doubting or unable to move forward in anything, or they will try to resist. But behind the resistance is a deeper fear of failure. As a result, these children get caught up in the stress and procrastinate like perfectionists. The third type is control. Parents set rules and control the whole process of their children's lives. In severe cases, they try to dictate their child's thoughts. Procrastination becomes a weapon of passive resistance. The fourth type is attachment. This type of family encourages excessive stumbling and interdependence. It gives the child the idea that, "You can't leave me and I won't leave you." This causes the child to procrastinate, intentionally or unintentionally, in the face of possible life changes. Behind the procrastination is the procrastination of independence. The fifth type is alienation. Parents who neglect their children over a long period of time. This can cause the child to do anything to avoid the loneliness that comes with doing things for oneself as an adult. When faced with a task that needs to be done alone, the child may procrastinate. There is also the possibility that the child will try to excel in order to get the parent's attention. In this case, they will procrastinate because of an extraordinarily high fear of failure. Few people have perfect families of origin. Through a person's procrastination, we may be able to see the problematic tendencies of the family of origin behind it. We may even be able to feel the aggression he suffered. The second source of internal psychological factors is the environment. In the case of procrastination, if a person is in an environment where procrastination is the most rewarding form of behavior, then it will be like moving a boulder when he tries to break the habit of procrastination. Today, there are 2 major environmental factors that reinforce and strengthen the thoughts that can cause us to procrastinate. The first environmental factor is the stressful environment. For many people, the more stressful the situation, the more likely they are to become fearful and anxious. The human brain is extremely sensitive to fear and anxiety. When we hurt our hand, It takes 400 to 500 milliseconds to feel the pain, but it takes only 14 milliseconds to feel fear. This means that we are often afraid and worried before we even realize what we are facing. So when a person is in a stressful situation, fear, anxiety, and worry will cause the body to instinctively and recklessly run away from the situation. You can imagine, if he has a perfectionist tendency, it will be even more difficult for him to force himself to start working right away. The second environmental factor is distraction. In our generation, we eat, think about work, reply to friends' messages, and pay attention to the latest news that appears on the notification bar of our cell phones. How can a person concentrate on one thing properly under such circumstances? 4. Understanding yourself is the first step to changing your procrastination. Why do we spend so much time talking about the causes of procrastination instead of how to reduce it? It's because often the only way to really face something and solve it is to understand it. People often overestimate the power of criticism and underestimate the power of understanding. When a person is procrastinating, the first thing they need is not to be blamed or attacked from the outside. When we procrastinate, the first thing we need is not self-criticism. Rather, we need to truly understand the struggles and conflicts that are going on inside. Only then can we rescue ourselves from the depths of procrastination. The author of this book is an experienced counselor. Before suggesting a solution, she gives a very simple advice, right? We must try to write about how we feel and what kind of sleep we might experience every time we procrastinate. For instance, what physical realities are we experiencing? Are we sleepy, tired, haven't had enough rest in a while? For example, what emotional or value-based fatigue are we facing? Are we so frustrated that we can't find the enthusiasm to do our work? Or do you feel that what you're doing is not worthwhile? And even if you force yourself to do it, you won't be happy? Write this down. What does understanding ourselves do? It helps us to let go of the defenses we have built up. Only when a person is fully understood can his psychological states that were originally used to defend himself be liberated. The river of life is always there. What we have to do is not cut it off with accusations and attacks. Rather, we must find a way to channel it into another river. 5. Strategies for dealing with delay. How can we change the river so that the water flows through? That's where the methods and tools come in. In fact, we've already mentioned some of the ways to deal with delays. In this final section, based on our deep understanding of procrastination, let's tackle the procrastination problem from start to finish. Here are the 3 main strategies. They are the adjustment manifesto. Make it smaller and talk to someone. First, the adjustment manifesto. People who procrastinate a lot often have some excuses for themselves. I need to be prepared. It's a beautiful day. I don't feel so good. I have to eat first. I have to exercise first. Why all these excuses for procrastination? When a person starts working on something they are tired of, the brain sends out signals of anxiety. To alleviate this fear, the brain creates these excuses to justify avoiding the task. Once we realize that these are just excuses created by the brain, we have a different perspective and the possibility of change. At this point, we can try to talk to ourselves. We can then try to negotiate with ourselves and adjust our self-declaration. Remember, the point of the adjustment is not to deny the fear, but to give more conclusions along with it. For example, I don't want to say to myself, I failed, but now I have to learn. No one can accept such a complete denial of one's own feelings. We can try to add, I'm tired, but I'll study for 15 minutes and then go to bed when I'm tired. In fact, if we can begin to study for 15 minutes, it may not be impossible to extend the learning process. At least we've started to move. This kind of negotiation with ourselves is to turn the unexamined emotions of our mind into words that we can act upon. Without suppressing or denying our inner emotions, it provides a framework for action. It also gives us a new outlet for our actions. The second strategy is to make big things small. Simply put, don't start a task thinking about the whole thing all the time. Perfectionists love this. They love to think big and start at the top, trying to make everything perfect before they start. But don't forget that this can mean never starting at all. The most important thing for us right now is to get moving. So feel free to pick one of the little things in this assignment as a starting point. If you're creating a presentation document, why not start with the page you want to do the most? If you're writing a product description, you can start by finding some good-looking images you'd like to include in the document. At the action level, making big things small allows us to begin a task with the least amount of resistance. On a cognitive level, it also serves to reduce our tension and anxiety. If we always think of something as a matter of life and death, it is certainly difficult. But if we concentrate hard on that part of the thing itself, we will be able to get to the bottom of it. The third strategy is to talk to someone. If you're worried that you're procrastinating, talk about it with someone, preferably someone you trust. Why do this? Don't underestimate the power of talking. For one thing, talking fits perfectly with the minimize the big deal strategy one mentioned earlier, so it's not particularly draining. After all, you're just talking, you're not succeeding or failing, so there's no fear or anxiety. On the other hand, chatting helps you get comfortable with the material. When chatting, you rely on interactions and reactions to get you moving, which is always less laborious for procrastinators. When interacting with friends, your low mental energy is easily replenished by external stimuli. You don't need them to be as professional as a counselor, but they can provide the kind of outside support you need to get through your procrastination woes right now. It's a little nudge to get the dry gears turning. Overall, procrastination. Why you do it, what to do about it now, is a very practical guide to thoroughly overcoming procrastination. If you are struggling with procrastination, I hope this book can provide you with some inspiration and help. If you enjoyed today's video, please like, subscribe, and share it with friends who might need it. Feel free to share your experiences and solutions for procrastination in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you next time.